All right, welcome to the Two Sons Podcast. Happy Star Wars Day, everybody.
Andor Day, baby.
Andor Day. We are finally back into Star Wars. All 3 episodes I binged this morning. I was kind of irritated because I wanted to watch them last night because I'm a little bit more like with it in the evenings. And I kept refreshing the feed, and like at 11, even at like close to like 10:30, 10:45, it wasn't up.
They never came. It allowed me to finish Thrawn, though.
Oh, there you go. So, very nice. Yes, if we have time this morning, depending on how this goes, we may or may not be covering Thrawn. Worst case scenario, we'll just do it next week. So first of all, before we get started, if you guys could subscribe to the YouTube channel, we'd sincerely appreciate it. Also, I have a link in the description to this video that takes you to all of our socials and feeds. If you guys could click that and follow all of our feeds, I'd really appreciate it as well.
Right.
But honestly, it was a little slow to start.
I think the first 2 episodes, especially, first of all, spoilers, right?
This is going to be 100% spoilers.
Right, we're about to break this down big time.
Yes.
Overall, I thought it was a little slow. It was kind of funny because it looked like Star Wars, but it didn't quite have that Star Wars feel, which I was okay with. They were definitely going for a more grungy type feel.
Elaborate on that a little bit.
So to me, it kind of watched like an old police TV show almost.
That's so funny.
So, and what I mean by that is it kind of had a general sensation of kind of depressed, overcast vibes almost.
That's true.
They did a
That's
ton of plot
case.
development. There's a little bit of action in the 3rd episode, but overall it was very plot heavy, character development heavy. But yeah, overall I thought it looked like Star Wars, but then it didn't have that Star Wars youthfulness or that magic that we're typically used to with Star Wars. I'm not saying I didn't like it. Actually, I enjoyed it. It was a different vibe for Star Wars for sure. But I think they probably achieved what they were going for by that.
Yeah, I mean, if you really think about what the rebellion is, it's entirely in the shadows. It's very shady. It's borderline. Everything steps on these moral lines. You could tell Cassian did not want to shoot that guy in the face, but he had to because of his predicament. And it kind of reminded me very similar to when he executed the dude in the alleyway from Rogue One.
Mm-hmm.
But in general, I think that's just the reality of what the rebellion was.
I think so too.
And we didn't get to meet Mon Mothma in this episode,
right? And
presumably she's going to be heavily involved elsewhere. But the thing is there's many phases and facets to this rebellion because there was I didn't really pick this up until the 3rd episode, and in the 3rd episode I realized why they took the time they did to go through the first 2 episodes, because it kind of established more than just Cassian. It established the woman who rescued Cassian. It established the fact that clearly even this entire salvage operation has a level of organization and kind of not a hatred for the I'd call it a hatred for the empire already, just in that entire group, their organization with the way they were hitting the bells.
Right.
The thing was stopping hitting the bells. You're just oh, I see what they're doing here. What they're establishing here is not a rebel cell, but I'll steal the word from the dude who was working underneath the overzealous cop dude. The kind of chubby Irish sounding dude. He said pockets of fomenting. That's what it was.
Yeah.
This was a pocket of people who's sick and tired of all the crap and had organized enough to at least resist their bosses.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, and this parallels with different groups, even the Phoenix Squadron, right? So you think of Zeb, you think of Ezra, you think of Sabine, all of whom have real reasons to hate the Empire. Hera, for sure, right? And then it showed different microcosms of different characters in this show where they had true reason to hate the Empire. For example, even though he kind of outed Cassian at the end of the 3rd episode, Tim gets shot, right?
Yep.
And then what's her name? Bix
Bix.
Bix.
Yeah.
Bix is
Bix.
Destroyed.
Mm-hmm.
And that's actually one of the reasons. That's the other thing that I was talking about in regards to it looked like Star Wars but didn't quite feel like Star Wars. This was a little bit dark. For example, they had that scene where Bix is literally chained to a wall essentially, and she's looking at her partner just bleeding out in front of her. That was pretty gnarly. Also, the kids walking up on that shuttle that had crashed. There's just dead, jaundiced bodies
Yep.
laying around.
And their leader just gets shot in the back.
Right. And then in front of all of them, right? And then even there was like the brothel scene and like essentially a prostitution ring, and Cassian's looking for his sister in it.
Yeah.
Like that's all pretty dark for Star Wars.
Dude. Right? Yeah, it kind of it captures the Rogue One vibe where it's like, here's all these people you love, and we're just gonna methodically just torture them and kill them and make you. But it's again like, you know, I was listening to or watching Game of Thrones again last night with Carly as we were waiting for the Star Wars episodes to come on, and once again there's this conversation between Cersei and Tyrion. And they're talking about how Tywin, their father, has been, you know, because we just passed the Red Wedding. So, like, basically the war with the Starks is over and the Lannisters utterly dominated them and utterly decimated them. And, you know, Cersei's kind of feeling high on her horse and talking about how they need to crush enemies. And Tyrion goes, it feels like every time we get rid of an enemy, we create two more.
Yeah.
And that concept was super interesting to me because that's basically like the downside of the Empire's methods.
Right.
They want to crush any and all opposition.
Yeah.
But every time they do, they just create more and more opposition.
Exactly.
Not the least of which is the dude who ratted out Cassian was one of the dudes who wanted to run to the rescue at the end because he realized what he was up against and what he had done. And like that's the thing, like that's creating an enemy, so to speak.
It
and
is.
that whole dynamic is like what I'm looking forward to most in the show. And as far as like the rebel cell concept goes, like you mentioned the rebels, like Ezra and Kanan and all of them. Like that group was not a rebellion at the beginning. What they were was just a small group of people that would steal from the Empire on Lothal.
Yeah.
And there was very little organization. They weren't really, occasionally they talked to Fulcrum, but like they were really low level like people. And even with this group that's here on this planet, I can't even remember what it's called already. Ferrix?
Ferrix, yeah.
Yeah, something like that.
It's Ferrix, yeah.
Yeah. But even the people on this Ferrix, it's like they have a loose connection to the rebellion in the form of Bix.
Right.
But outside of that, there's not a whole lot else. And obviously that dude helps Bix because he has the antenna set up for her to communicate with him. So it's kind of a similar vibe. And that's what has me so stoked about this show. This is live action Rebels without Jedi. You know?
You're totally right.
And I'm super stoked for that.
Well, and I like that they're taking a more gritty tone with this.
Yeah, because they can't do that with a cartoon on Disney.
No, they can't. And it's funny. You and I in the past have talked about how great it would be to have like a more gritty approach on Star Wars. What would Star Wars look like if it was rated R?
Dude, yeah. Right? HBO Star Wars.
Right?
Dude,
so it'd be gnarly, to say the least. And this is a small glimpse into that. A small glimpse into that. Because like I said, it doesn't feel childish at all. And I love it. And for the record, I love the cartoons.
Oh, absolutely.
I'm a huge fan of Rebels. I'm a huge fan of Clone Wars. Actually, Clone Wars probably is one of the biggest reasons why I love Star Wars so much, is because going through college, I started watching Clone Wars again, and I just fell in love with it again. Does this feel like Star Wars to you or no?
It does. I'm bought in. That's the best part about the darkness is it avoids the cheesiness of like Vespas. You know what I mean? And that kind of stuff. Like there's that dark, and that dark tone is
Lost
important
Vespa.
Because if they're ever going to go into something like telling the backstory of a Sith, like if they ever did want to do a Darth Bane, or let's say this acolyte dives in,
so sick.
You have. Oh, dude, are you kidding? But they have to be willing to darken up Star Wars a little bit. Yeah. And you know what? Trust your audience. Trust your audience to pick. You know, like if you have members of your audience that don't like that have kids that don't want the darkness, like you can trust your audience to filter that for their people. Like we can handle it. We're adults.
I would agree with that.
You know, like that kind of thing.
They're doing a nice job too, because we know that they're coming out with at least one cartoon, or maybe even two, that are coming.
Oh yeah. Well, yeah. There's the children one, and then there's the Clone Wars vibe one.
Yeah. And then they're actually coming out with Bad Batch too.
Oh really?
As well. Yeah. So I'm really excited for that.
I need to finish Bad Batch. That's one of the areas that I'm behind you. But I did watch the intro to Bad Batch the other day randomly because it was one of the things from Rebels that I wanted to get a vibe for. So I wanted to, before we kind of get into some of the details, I wanted to present to you one of my already radical theories.
Oh yeah, you mentioned that.
So
you think we met someone already?
Do you remember? No, it's not that. I'm basing this based on one single piece of information that was a text that appeared on the screen.
Okay.
And basically, when we were watching the trailers, if you remember, we saw a couple of different things. We saw different looking uniforms that didn't really look like Empire uniforms.
Third party, right?
Yeah, but now we know they're third party.
Right.
But at the time, my original guess was like, oh, I wonder if this was like the first iteration of Empire uniforms, you know?
Yeah.
And then we saw those shuttles in the scene of the 3 shuttles descending on Ferrix or Fennec or whatever. And it was very Clone Wars-esque. And I'm sitting there thinking like, oh, like this is going to be set immediately after the Empire takes over. But no, we get the first scene and it's the year 5 BBY, which means before the Battle of Yavin. That is exactly when Rebels takes place. So what I was stoked about that is like what the shuttles and the uniforms. That's this whatever
the security task force.
Yeah, it's a company, and it's I have it in my notes. I'm not allowed to stop petting Lola. If I do, she will immediately start rebelling. Not entire pockets of fomenting are taking place right over here. but what I had it in my notes. But the name of this company, it's clearly like essentially. It's clear that at this point in the Empire, they're tasking low-level security down to the companies that are benefiting from the Empire's mining operations and salvage operations and things along those lines.
Right.
But here's the thing. I think that in a show that's going to include Cassian Andor, who is one of the top rebel commandos, and in a show that includes Mon Mothma, who's one of the most important she's literally the leader of the rebellion.
Right.
And I would assume that we'll see Bail Organa as well at some point during the show. I think Grand Admiral Thrawn's going to make an appearance in this show.
Do you?
I think so.
I hope so bad. That would be so cool to see him live action.
It will live up to his stature as someone who deals with significant rebel cells.
Right.
It'd be the perfect way to show him, because here's the thing. When he's in Ahsoka, he won't be with the Empire anymore. And that'll be cool for us because we know Thrawn and we've read the books and all those different things. But Grand Admiral Thrawn was this incredible, admiral in the Galactic Empire. We need to see some of that.
I would agree.
And I think that'd be such a cool way to like hide it. Don't say anything. Yeah. Kind of like the way they dropped Cad Bane into that's the way I think we'll see it and be like, it's Thrawn.
Yeah. No. And I hope they get it right if they do. Because that's been one thing that Jason and I have talked about is, so we're going through all the Thrawn books. We're going through all the Ascendancy books right now. And for the most part, we feel like Rebels got Thrawn right. But there's been some uncharacteristic things that we've seen in Rebels.
By the way, I saw another one of those the other day.
Oh, really?
When Thrawn makes the guy get on the defaulty speeder bike and ride it until he blows up and dies. Oh, yeah. I was like, that's pretty gnarly. It doesn't sound very Thrawn-like. Yeah. Thrawn would just be like, I know for a fact you did this. You're going in a jail cell. Like that's the way real Thrawn would have done it.
For our viewers, Thrawn, in contrast to what we see with the Rebels, he's not as cutthroat as he actually seems like. Yes, he will allow people to die, but that's one of his goals is to decrease like civilian loss. And and in his cunning nature, he also is extremely tactful in the way that he goes about battles in order to preserve life. And that's just not a huge vibe that you get from watching Rebels. So I'm super curious that if Thrawn is in this, if they just make him just completely heartless, or if we do see a different portrayal of Thrawn than what we've seen in Rebels.
I'm willing to accept, as a Star Wars fan, the minor dips into craziness like that, like the first.
I can accept it too.
Yeah, but I think there's a line.
I think there's a
line. If he starts just going outrageously cruel full time, I think that would bother me because it'd be like, well, what's the point of writing all these books then? And this is Timothy Zahn's character that you're messing around with. You know what I mean?
Exactly. And for the record, according to Timothy Zahn, in an interview that I saw with him, he was okay with how Thrawn was portrayed.
Cool.
In Rebels. So that'd be really cool to see.
And we talked about this, like at a certain point, Thrawn can't be a good bad guy,
Right.
Like he is a good bad guy, but for the purpose of a cartoon, when you're trying to communicate with adults and children, and you need to convey the basic concept of the right side and the wrong side, they needed to add a darker tinge to Thrawn to make that
especially for little kids watching, like good and bad, like who's good, who's bad, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying. Like you can't have all the kids just being like major Thrawn stans. You know what I mean?
Just Thrawn fans. Jason Tim Thrawn fan, but he's 4.
But that said, if he does end up being some sort of good character with Ahsoka in the future show, they need to kind of start working on that transition. So I am curious to see how they portray him if he shows up. By the way, he might not even show up, and I might just be a big idiot. But to me, it's such an obvious like home run cameo appearance to throw in there. I think so too. I think you could throw Ahsoka into the show too. You could throw a bunch of different things, and Ahsoka works for the Rebellion. We know because she's Fulcrum.
Right. And this show so far has been very friendly to your average viewer, meaning there hasn't been anything super in depth that has happened in this show where your average Star Wars fan would be like, what
in the world is going on?
Is that right? So if they subtly added Thrawn into this in order to develop his character more for like the Ahsoka series or whatever, I think that would make sense on Disney's part. That way more people could know of Thrawn before he just shows up and is a main character at some point.
That's a great point.
Hopefully he is.
Yeah, you need to build a robust backstory, and they have through Rebels, through the books. I mean, we're literally going to be breaking down potentially today, depending on if we have time, the 4th Thrawn book that we've read, and there's 2 more for us to read. Right. Like they went in depth into this character. It is since Disney bought Star Wars, they've only done like 12 adult novels or something like that, or maybe 15, and 6 of them are Thrawn. Like you could not tell me that that's not a very important.
That's a really good point.
And I really think that this is an investment on their part. I think he's going to play a role in this show. I think he's going to play a role in Ahsoka. I wouldn't be surprised if at some point in the future they go back and do a TV series called Thrawn. That's literally just his adventures with the Empire. Can you imagine?
So cool. That'd be so cool.
I would lose my mind personally. I always tell my wife, I'm like, it's like Sherlock Holmes combined with Star Wars. Like it's like combined with like military leadership type stuff. Right. But we can't spend too much time talking about Thrawn because he isn't a factor yet. What did you think of Andor's backstory, Cassian's backstory on that planet? I thought it was super interesting. That it was when it was still considered to be the Galactic Republic. Did you notice that?
Oh no, I did not notice that.
So there's a scene when his mom, whatever you want to call it, and presumably the other guy's his dad. Who ends up dying.
Okay.
But like, because the dude who's with Marva when they're on the ship, he's not in the other scenes in the future.
That's a good point.
And they reference his father dying, so I'm going to presume that's what that's what they're referencing. But she actually says like, he's like, well, let's just leave him, and she's like, we can't. They killed a Republic officer. It's going to be open season when they show up, and then they report a Republic frigate showing up in the orbit. So what's interesting there is like it strongly hints that Palpatine was engaging in some nefarious stuff in terms of like moral gray areas
while it was
still the Republic, which I thought was super interesting because like the Jedi could have been completely unaware that they're strip mining these worlds and doing these things because Palpatine's just keeping it beneath the surface,
right? Well, and maybe preparing for something greater, which would be the Empire.
And don't forget Plagueis, Sidious's master, was heavily connected in all of the like in the same way that Sidious was the political genius, Plagueis was like the economical genius. Like he understood the business side of things. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but to answer your question, I thought the initial story of Cassian Andor is exceedingly interesting. It's essentially a band of kids that lost their parents to some disaster, presumably.
Do you think it's that, or do you think they're like some weird like humans that are like not entirely human and they just don't age on the skin?
Oh. What?
Because they were only children.
I know, that's what I mean, Jason. This is so funny. Okay, who knows who's right? This is hilarious.
Oh, but he becomes an adult. Yes. Yeah, you're right. That's okay.
Okay, let's break this down. Okay,
it's early in the morning, okay?
Either there's some race of alien humans that don't age but do. Or there's a bunch of kids that lost their parents in a mining accident that we know about already.
Gotcha, a mining accident. Okay, gotcha.
So presumably he's tasked with taking care of his sister, and then fit hits the shan, so to speak, and he's essentially adopted, and apparently he had no means of going back to find his sister.
It's just weird that all of their parents would be dead.
I know.
That's what I'm saying.
They're essentially orphans, right? Mm-hmm. No, I agree. Like, who knows, right? But that's my assumption is like...
He takes a drug that makes him age, finally.
Yes. There's a special leaf that's down by the river, and he decides to eat it.
That was not my brightest moment ever.
Dude, Jason, for as on as you are all the time, those moments just satisfy me so much. While you're rebooting... Let's talk about...
what were you going to say?
The ships in this show were so cool.
Oh, all of them were, yeah.
So when I first saw that task force ship with all the smaller ships jetting off in each direction, so it was like flying through hyperspace, and you can see all the ships
on the
like,
side,
kind of hanging off the side, and then they deploy, which I thought was super, super cool. It did have Clone Wars vibes as well. And then the other ship that was really cool, there was like the modified Y-wing that Cassian was using in order to scoot around.
That he took out of the junkyard or whatever.
Yeah. And then the coolest ship was, what's his name? Luthen? Or what's the buyer's name?
Yeah. The guy who they fly away with at the end.
Right.
Yeah, his ship was really cool.
So his ship had big time Corellian vibes.
I was just gonna say the same thing, like some sort of YT model freighter that's been like changed and updated and modified.
It had like the offset cockpit on the right side, and then like the central like donut circular hall was super super similar to the Millennium Falcon.
It just had big wings on it essentially that were the biggest difference.
Very intriguing. Yeah.
And there's this cool thing that happens in Star Wars, and I don't know what it is, but like it'd be like if you were driving around here in Tucson and like 60% of the vehicles on the road were built pre-1960. Like just everything.
That's a good point.
It's like
Cuba.
Yeah,
they have a bunch of old cars there.
Yeah, like every single ship is vintage.
Yeah.
And then like you see a ship like the Corellian one, and you're like, whoa, this is really nice, you know, compared to some of the others. It's totally a Star Wars vibe. And I got a little bit of Braca vibes from Jedi Fallen Order when they're like set in the salvage yard and they're all wearing those uniforms and stuff. Right. Like I definitely got Braca vibes there as well.
Too. Yeah.
What did you? I thought the dynamic of the overzealous like officer guy was really funny.
He was very gung ho, right? Are you talking about the bigger guy?
No, the guy that okay. So like one of my favorite like we've all known someone that gets drunk on power, like stupid amounts of power, like little power, like he has a tiny bit of authority in a situation.
Like a hall monitor in school.
Yes, exactly.
Like
hall monitor vibes.
Like you're out of class.
Yes, exactly. and it's definitely one of those things where I thought they did a really cool job of portraying that character and juxtaposing him with his boss, which is like this overly practical man, where he's like, look, dude, like they were drinking what they weren't supposed to be drinking. They were at a club they weren't supposed to be at.
Right.
They clearly picked a fight with somebody that was the wrong guy, and they got killed. These guys were idiots. Like, and we need to keep our crime rates low. This, like, for the sake of our reports. So, like, let this go. But then you also get little details like everyone's uniform is kind of like jumpsuit-esque and like loose. And his is like tailored, and he like is like, and he's doing the Thrawn thing where he's like keeping his hands clasped behind his back all the time,
he's
like
very upright,
dude,
always at attention. And then he just looks terrible at the end of the third episode. After all of his buddies have been killed.
Completely bit off more than he could chew.
Completely. Yeah, that was an interesting character. And I think he's right here. So presumably he's going to be around for a lot of the rest of the show. Also, I didn't even notice, but we've got...
you didn't see him in the trailers?
No, I guess I did. Dude, what's his name?
I know. Well, I probably would have remembered it. It was Saw Gerrera.
Oh my goodness, it's early.
Yeah, he. I would imagine that he's going to end up eventually working for the Empire. Is that guy?
Saw?
No, the other guy.
Yeah, I would agree. And there's even some X-wings and some TIE fighters.
Yeah, I think, dude, and I think we're going full on live action Rebels. I think this is going to. Because by the time we get to Rogue One and by the time we get to Rebels later seasons, like the Rebellion is a full blown military force. They have they have a whole ranking system and a hierarchy. They manage themselves like a military force. Like they're very well organized. This we know we have 12 episodes, which we can alleviate Luke's concerns. He was concerned that it would be like a 6-episode season and we'd get the first 3 out and it'd be done.
Half of them in one day.
We have Andor episodes to cover through Thanksgiving, man. Are you happy about that?
I'm incredibly stoked.
Yes.
And then we've got other things on the Turnpike as well for Star Wars.
We have tons and tons of stuff on the Turnpike.
Jason, we don't have to watch Game of Thrones anymore.
No, he has to watch Game of Thrones. He has to watch Game of Thrones. It's our most watched episode ever. You have to stick through it. We're trying to build up your tolerance for random acts of violence.
I know. Just ridiculous stuff.
What else did you have in your notes?
I just thought the detail was good. That's pretty much the last thing is I cannot imagine how much money they've spent on developing this show. Like for example, it was even a small scene and they're up in the headquarters for that task force. And that scene alone, if you really thought about how large it is in real life,
the set,
just like the set, it was incredible. And there's just row after row after row of computers, which look super Star Wars-esque. I cannot imagine how much time and effort was placed into developing the show. There was even one part, and it was super subtle. And they're in that headquarter area, and the roof of it is like partly glass, and there's just a tiny little spaceship that's flying across, and that probably took someone maybe like a couple hours of their time getting paid full time to develop content for Disney, and then they're doing little stuff like that, which I really appreciate.
That stuff is so important for buy-in and just like getting you to care at all about the overall scene.
Right, and there's not a single moment where I felt like I was ripped out of Star Wars. Right, so like we've talked about that. Either there's certain things that just completely distract you and just make you leave the Star Wars world. There was not a single time throughout all 3 episodes where I felt like distracted by a minor detail or a huge plot hole.
Do you know the buyer's name? Luthen. Okay.
Yeah.
I thought that was kind of a cool scene too when Luthen's talking to Cassian, where it's like, first of all, there was lots of cool little things like him talking about like the rules, like rule number 1, build your exit on the way in. Rule
he was
number
already
2,
prepping him.
Oh, dude, yeah, just like full training, Mr. Miyagi type stuff. Yeah. But like I really liked how he was just like, dude, are you ready to fight these people for real?
Right.
Like
forget the box.
Yeah, dude, I don't care about the damn box. Like I'm here for you, man. Like we're like that whole vibe was super cool, and like and just in general, like I do think that the 3 episodes did a good job of capturing the reason why they're doing this.
Right.
Because like
I think that's the biggest point right there that they wanted to notice.
Exactly.
They
because
wanted us to notice.
You could imagine that for most people, when Palpatine took control, the best thing they could have done is just go about their business.
Right.
And they'd be fine.
Continue to be productive. The Empire needs you to be productive.
Exactly. But no, these are people that they're demonstrating to you that like living under this regime is like a mix of the Empire itself being ruthless and cruel, but also them empowering these companies and these entities that are awful. Like no different. They've dived into that a lot. Like even with the magistrate, who built ships for the Empire and this company. It's all about like explaining that the system of the Empire was basically just putting everybody underneath their thumb while they made money with and kept peace and order by empowering the super awful rich people, basically.
Exactly.
It was definitely a good vibe, and we got a lot more to go through here. I'm really curious. What do you think? Do you think that what was his name one more time?
Luthen.
Do you think Luthen's already with Mon Mothma or no?
I would think so. He was exceedingly put together. His ship was incredible.
And equipped.
Yeah. And he had apparently just tons of funds to buy whatever he wanted.
Yeah, tons of money, great ship. He had some sort of weird like not a lightsaber, but like a retracting.
Yeah, I wonder what that was.
Like it looked.
I thought
it almost looked like
first, but then he obviously didn't need a cane. So
I was thinking my first guess was like some sort of weird retractable Beskar weapon or something like that, like something along those lines.
Yeah, but I think he is in the upper echelons of the rebellion already.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so presumably in episode 4 we'll be introduced to Mon Mothma and learn a little bit more
Hopefully
about her.
so.
Because
go ahead.
When I saw 3 episodes, I'm like, we have to meet everybody, right? But no, it's crazy. Like, you don't meet Mon Mothma until later on in the season, which is cool.
And the 3 episode thing made sense then to me, because essentially that's how long it took them to develop the entire story of Cassian's upbringing and how he gets adopted, essentially. So that made sense to me, and I think they probably realized that people would have lost interest if they couldn't just watch it all at once.
Oh, dude, can you imagine if it ended after that first episode?
Yeah.
You'd be like, what did I just
like
see?
I said, it was like filmed almost like an old police show. Right? It was just like very dry, like a lot of dialogue. Right? It was very gloomy, procedural. Yeah. So,
I remember when we were sitting at your bar stools talking about this when they first made that announcement, we were like, they're experts. They have to have a really good reason for doing this, and it definitely made sense.
Makes sense.
My last note was, I hope one day that I can ever be as stoked about anything as the guy who hammers the bell is.
Oh, he gets geared up. That's an important job. That's cool,
dude. There's like this moment right before he starts to. He's like,
I know. He just gets amped.
Yeah, dude. You're just like, this dude is like, this dude
artist.
is vibing. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I thought the scene where they all started like hammering out the signal on the bells, that was a really, really cool scene.
It showed a lot of unity amongst the general population.
When they stopped that like 30-second to a minute long scene where there's just complete silence was riveting. I was glued to the screen.
I thought it was cool. Overall, rate the show. All 3 of them so far, 0 to 10. 0 to Rogue One.
I feel like it's too early to have a strong opinion, but I'd go with like a 7, meaning like I'm not completely bought in yet, but at the same time, like I'm enjoying it. It's Star Wars, and I'm excited for the next episode.
I'd agree. I would say a 7, and I think that's exactly where they want us. I think they want things to start to pick up and to grow, and I think that's going to gain a lot of interest.
The slow burn is important. Like I was talking to Carly yesterday, like when we were watching Game of Thrones, because there's 2 really nasty things that are happening in the season that we're in, like the Red Wedding, but also this a Theon Greyjoy is getting tortured by Ramsay Bolton at Winterfell, or at the Dreadfort is what they call it. And like Carly's like, I hate this scene. I'm like, no. You have to watch this, because this is what gets you so emotionally invested for the Battle of the Bastards. This is what gets you so emotionally invested when Arya comes back for revenge against the Freys and against, like, that's the thing, is like you need to see these details,
right,
so that you understand like why Bix decides to leave. I think she's going to leave and join the rebellion too.
I would think so.
And like you have to understand why these people want to do this.
Exactly.
And the only way you can do that is if you understand their backstory. And I'm all for it. That's the beauty of TV series.
Right.
All of that stuff is stuff that would get cut out in a movie if they did an Andor movie.
True. Yeah. So overall, I'm really enjoying it. I like it a lot.
All right, guys, that is all we have for today. As always, we sincerely appreciate your support. If you guys could do us a favor and subscribe to the YouTube channel, I would sincerely appreciate that. Also, I have a link in the description to this video that takes you to all of our socials and feeds. If you guys could click on that and follow us, we'd really appreciate it. And we will see you next time.
Thanks a lot.